to balance out the powers, for lack of a better words. Bluefield State's going to be a force to reckon with. They controlled that game early. Central made a run on them, but then they dominated the fourth quarter to come out with the victory. Go Big Blue.
Mike, give me your thoughts. They were at home, Bluefield, West Virginia, Mitchell Stadium, and they get it done at home. They continue to roll. What's your thoughts, Mike, on Big Blue?
Well, number one, I was looking at the stats, and they are impressive. They are balanced on both sides of the ball. Looks like they put up about 430 yards. Had pretty much dominating the time of possession, which shows not only they balanced, but they ran the ball decently. Where passed 335 of that was passing. So yes, it was home, so they had some home cooking, but they were on the ball. And I agree with AD. I think we need to look out and keep our eye out for them on the horizon.
Yeah, let me stick with you, Mike, on this one as we move over to the HBCU New York City Football Classic, or NYC, in MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey. SIAC versus the MEAC. Morehouse Maroon Tigers, a mid-major program, fall to 0-3. Howard Bison gets the first win of the season. A major division HBCU program, 1-3 on the season. Mike, what were your thoughts in terms of that matchup? Mike? Let me go to you, BJ. What are your thoughts in terms of that?
Started off slow for Howard. You know, this score 0-0 for a long time. Howard kind of struggled a little bit, but then they really got it going in the second half. And you really start to see that offense be explosive, be effective, move the ball up and down the field. And defensively, they kept a stranglehold on Morehouse pretty much the entire game. That defensive line dominated. And we got to talk about the work of that front seven, limiting Morehouse not only in first downs, but also in total yardage. And the most important thing, keeping that goose egg on the scoreboard.
Yeah, when you shut people out, it makes you feel good. You put your chest out. You've seen too many of these shutouts, BJ Jones. You're not gonna feel too good about it. I get it. We'll get into that. Let me be nice. With that being said, Mike, what were your thoughts on this? The Maroon Tigers and Howard Bison. You know, the smart folks were in the room in New York.
Yeah, I got to give it. I'm pretty hard on Howard. I always say they not a tailgating school, all of that good stuff. To all the Howard folks out there,
they wine and cheese, man. They wine and cheese.
They wine and cheese. You know, their idea behind is a BET video exclusive, and all right. So anyway, solid win. You got to take the hats off. I think BJ talked to it. They put a goose egg on them, so didn't allow anything. 21 points in the fourth quarter. Pretty good, a nice day outage by Quentin Williams, quarterback. I think he finished with like 230 give or take yards. They continue to use that running back by committee for Hunter and Eden James. So solid balanced attack around, I think 131 yards on the ground, 230 or so in the air. So solid win altogether by them in the New York Classic. So hats off to Howard.
No doubt. Let me get into the CIAA game of the week at the mid-major division level. In Ettrick, Virginia, Rogers Stadium, CIAA matchup. St. Augustine Falcons fall to 0-3 on in the conference. On the road as Virginia State Trojans, they improved to 2-1, 1-0 in the conference. Dr. Henry Frazier III gets it done with a big victory. Let's go to Joshua Sims Sr. and get his thoughts on the Virginia State Trojans, this matchup against St. Augustine Falcons.
Yeah, man. Offensive coordinator Lamar Manigault continues to be impressive in his first year as offensive coordinator at Virginia State. Offense went bananas yesterday against St. Aug. Against a kind of young St. Aug defensive side of the ball. I had a chance to kind of go there during the summertime and go see how they were looking during the summer. And one of the big things that was kind of floating around that St. Augustine University's campus was that they were young. A lot of freshmen getting some experience this year. A lot of sophomores getting an opportunity to get a second shot at it. So to see Coach Manigault and that offense and led by that great quarterback that they have there at Virginia State kind of take advantage of that youth that they got at St. Aug. I expected that to happen. But I did not expect 40-plus points, 40-plus point explosion. So I will say Virginia State is a great team in the CIAA to look out for. And I talked to one of Virginia Union's coaches last night. I do plan on going up for the Virginia State-Virginia Union game. That's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I like that thought process because as we talked about Bowie State with that major upset, it seems that may be shifting to Virginia. That Virginia State-Virginia Union is always a great matchup between rivals, and it might just have gotten a little bit better. It'll be interesting to see what that goes, but let's slide over, if you would, to the SIAC. But before we do that, I do want to get one final thought in terms of that Virginia St. Augustine with our Division II guru. AD Drew, what were your thoughts in terms of this Virginia State St. Augustine matchup?
You say you didn't expect that type of victory. Well, if you're St. Augustine, when you turn the ball over 4 times, it's kind of hard to not get blown out. 3 fumbles and an interception. Let's just do the math right there. That's not a formula for victory for most of these teams. St. Augustine did dominate the time of possession, though. So, interesting. St. Aug 4-12 on 3rd downs. Virginia State 7-14. So not only did Virginia State take the ball away from St. Augustine, but they were efficient when they were in those tough situations. Virginia State 465 total. St. Aug 323. 323 is respectable, but not when you give it up 465. So
and
it is what it is.
As you said, great point. BJ Jones, let's go to this Thursday night game on ESPN, Columbia, South Carolina, Charlie W. Johnson Stadium. It was on ESPNU. You had the crew there to cover it as well. This is a top 10 matchup. I was interested in this as we went off on the show, got a chance to dig into it. Number 9, Savannah State Tigers, 1-2 now as they fall in terms of what's going on in that race. Number 3, Benedict Tigers improved to 3-0 and did it pretty efficiently. What were your thoughts in terms of this matchup, BJ Jones?
Man, it's fun to watch a Chinnisberry coach football team, man, because you're going to get outstanding play on the offensive line. And when they got that thing rolling in that second half, Doc, and they pulled away, they were running the ball at will. Savannah State couldn't do anything. That young quarterback from Savannah State, man, when he pulls it down, he's explosive. He's man,
really quick. Well, he's quick to that outside.
But man, Benedict, man, we saw this last year with Benedict. They started off hot. The challenge is going to be, can they maintain this throughout the season? But right now, man, they look like one of the teams to beat in the SIAC.
Yeah, I like it. Great points when you talk about that matchup. There were 2 plays in that game that stood out to me, one for each team where it talked about hustle. You're talking about well-coached teams. One was a kickoff punt return where they were going in right before the half, and a shoelace tackle came across the field and saved points going on the board. And then after a block extra point, it looked like he was going in to get the 2-point, and the guy ran all the way down the field, doesn't give up on the play, and tackles him literally a couple of yards before the goal line.
As a 3, I believe.
Yeah, so that was big in terms of those 2 plays and for both teams. So credit to the coaches of getting those guys to play in, but special credit to Benedict Tigers as they hold on at least to the number 3 spot. It'll be interesting to see what happens on Tuesday, what comes out from that. Let me go to you, Joshua Sims Sr., to put the final caps on this matchup. What were your thoughts in terms of top 10 matchup between Savannah State Tigers and Benedict Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, we were on the show on Thursday, and I absolutely was singing the praises of that Savannah State quarterback. But Benedict coming out on top, man, that was a impressive W on ESPNU. To see them dominate like that, get a double-digit scoring victory, it was impressive. It was very, very impressive. That was my first time really getting a chance in a little while to be able to sit down and really watch that full Benedict squad. I was a little bit more impressed with that defense, man, and how they played in the second half. I was very, very impressed with how that defense played in the second half. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how Benedict finished the season. To BJ's point, they started off hot last year, and to see them finish the rest of the season is going to be a big point for me. But absolutely, man, I was very, very surprised. And on the Thursday show, I said Savannah State was going to win, but Ali, man, that's my first loss on your show, Doc. I was undefeated prior to that, man.
Man, it's gonna happen a lot on this show.
Man, you better keep living.
It's gonna happen a lot on this show. You taking the L.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
We'll bring in the HBCU bands and let them do their show. I don't know, maybe not, because we have this thing now where these HBCU bands are leaving in the second half of the game. What's up with that? Versus the one marching 100. Now we get the world fame and Grambling. I mean, is Jackson State doing it that bad? They beating up on teams. The Sonic chasing folks out the stadium. I don't understand this. And then you got Texas Southern deciding that they're gonna go play in front of the Southern band at halftime, as if Southern is not gonna respond. Well, Southern might not do it in football, but I don't know. The band side, they made some noise there. But anyway, stick with us. We'll be right back on the other side, and we'll get into some major division matchups after you hear a little bit about this band at halftime, and you tell me who wins, because you know we talk about the marching sport, winners and losers. No, we'll get to that on Thursday, but stick with us. We'll be right back on the break, and we'll give you some games of the week in the major division style.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
The new GMC Sierra with hands-free driving offers the most advanced and luxurious pickup in its class. Yeah, it rocks.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people try to get down.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. We're here with Mike Washington, AD Drew, BJ Jones, and Joshua Sims, Senior. Boy, I tell you, our halftime dialogue with the fans. Don't worry about the band. Don't worry about it. We're not gonna get into it, but trust it.
That talk before we went to the locker room is crucial.
So let's get into this matchup here. I'm gonna go to BJ Jones first with the Southern and Texas Southern, and I'll take on Mike since both of these guys are alumni on the schools, and they got to really jump into this matchup. It was an Arlington football showdown, I should say. Excuse me. Globe Life Park, Arlington, Texas. Southern Jaguars fall to 1-2, 0-1 in conference. Texas Southern Tigers improved to 1-2 and 1-1 in conference play. It was basically a balanced approach, at least from Texas Southern perspective. Stingy defense effort fuels first TSU shutout over Southern since 1971. Back-to-back wins since I'm not sure when. But let me go to BJ Jones first to kind of break down what he saw in this matchup. Obviously, people are wide-eyed about the score, but let BJ Jones really give you some breakdown in terms of what he saw take place.
Well, technically, man, Southern played right into Texas Southern's hands. Offensively, Texas Southern came out like game busters. Texas Southern had 186 yards of total offense in the first quarter. Now, they only had 352 yards of total offense the entire game, which lets you know that Southern's defense did their job, only allowing 166 yards over the last 3 quarters of that ball game. But the tape on Texas Southern was to run the football. We saw what Prairie View did. They completed no passes, ran the ball for over 320 yards, won the game. Saw what North Texas did, put up over 300 yards of total offense, and Southern comes out slinging it, which to me, honestly, made no sense. And y'all understand that, that there's philosophies that you have and there's things that you do, but sometimes what you do can play right into your opponent's hands, and that's what we saw on yesterday. Quarterback play for Southern was very he was efficient from a completion, and if you look at the statistics, Bashawn McCray, 18 of 30, only 12 incompletions, 3 interceptions, could have been more than that. And that offense just didn't look effective. And, it was quarterback play wasn't well. There's a lot of things going wrong with the Southern University on the offensive side of the football.
Understand. It'll be interesting to watch that going forward to see what kind of challenges, changes may be taking place, particularly at maybe the quarterback position with those 3 interceptions. But let me go to Mike Washington. He was doing the wine and the sweets. So y'all talk about these other folks with the wine and cheese. Mike had his wine with his hands sitting up there watching the game. I'm like, man, is he working or is he? Never mind. I'm sorry, Mike. I wasn't going to tell the world that. But go ahead, Mike. What's your thoughts on Texas Southern and Southern matchup?
You can't be telling the world my secrets, man. I'm gonna have to start my wine podcast. So I don't know, just to pick up off of where the football whisperer left off. I was shocked. I didn't know if Texas Southern just, came out and hit him in the mouth. Texas Southern had 14-21 in the first half, and I was scratching my head. And when I was watching the game, Southern did move the ball at times. It seemed, between the 20s, but then somewhere they just could not finish. It does not hurt with 3 turnovers. I was wondering why they didn't rush the ball more. So a lot of what I call data points that caused me to scratch my head. It's not like Southern can't rush the ball. So I was wondering what happened with that game plan. On the other side of the ball, you got to tip your hat to Texas Southern. They had a balanced attack. I think BJ said it, 352 total yards, 186 passing. They were much more efficient. A couple of data points stood out for each yards per pass. Texas Southern was like 8.5. Southern was just at 5 yards per attempt for completion, and then yards per rush. Texas Southern actually had 4.8 yards per 4.7. I'm sorry, and Southern only had 3.8. So small details, but that kind of gives you an idea of the offense and how efficient it was. So,
yeah, I was watching the ticker before I started watching the game, and the ticker on ESPN had it wrong. They had Southern scored first and 6-0, 7-0 run or whatever, and I was like, oh man, here we go. And then you get back, and I get a text from somebody that's at the game, Edwin Drayden, in house. He said, man, Texas Southern should be up 14-0.
Yeah.
I said, oh, what's going on? What? And then I finally get to watching the matchup, and I'm like, wow, this is different. But let's go to Joshua Sims as we move on, and let's look at this MEAC Colonial matchup. Number 3, North Carolina Central, 3-0, obviously on the season. They continue to play some really impressive football. But you go on the road and you get a win against a 25-ranked New Hampshire Wildcats, obviously a historically white college university. For those that may not know, they are 2-1 now, but they came in 2-0 in the conference play and 2-0 overall. So fascinating matchup. But I want to get inside these numbers. As we watched it, you saw North Carolina Central dominate this game, at least from what I saw on film. Tell me, Joshua, what did you see happening in this matchup?
Yes, sir. And just on the preface of that, Doc, I would like to say that I was a little bit disappointed by the, I looked at ESPN yesterday. We got up yesterday morning. I looked at ESPN. They had the University of New Hampshire as a 13-point. We were a 13-point underdog to the University of New Hampshire. And I was on with Off Script the night before on the Twitter Spaces, and he was asking me why I was nervous. And it was because I'm trying to figure out, and I'm a proficient person who likes to watch film. I was trying to figure out why they had the University of New Hampshire picked so heavily to beat us. And it wasn't only them. Not only did we not get any really real votes to get in the top 25 this week in the FCS stats top 25 or the coaches poll, but they had New Hampshire so much favored to beat us that they believed that we were just not the better team. And I'm like looking at the roster like, are y'all seeing the same thing I'm seeing? Like, I don't understand. Maybe my football eyes have gone bad, because my coaching days are over. But dog, I'm pretty sure and then I went back and looked and saw how they played against the University of Albany and how they played against Monmouth, and it didn't stand out to me why they would be a 13-point favorite in that game. But then let's get to the game, Doc. And from literal kickoffs, North Carolina Central University dominated that game from kickoff. Now, given in the first half, our defense did not play up to the standard that everybody has now come to become, kind of understand the type of defense we have. Coach Courtney Cord kind of made it seem like in that first half that we were kind of trying to see what they could throw, let them kind of gas themselves out, throw everything they could at us. But in that second half, we were basically pitching a shutout in that second half, given a kind of weird, wonky, over-the-shoulder, like weird throw that we gave up, the only touchdown in the second half for that game. Our defense played phenomenal in the second half. And keep in mind now, it is becoming very, very obvious that we are a second-half team. In the second half of games, our defense and our offense becomes much more efficient. Our defense becomes more aggressive, and it seems like we're able to close the game in the second half. But the big stat of the night, Davius Richard, our junior quarterback out of Belle Glade, Florida, who should probably be on the watch list for Player of the Year, who should absolutely the MEAC Player of the Year. Over 300 yards of total offense just by him alone.
Wow.
I mean, the kid rushed for over 100 yards. He passed for over 200 yards. And I think he passed for just up under 200 yards, 194 yards passing, what I think I saw on the stat line. But this kid is the real deal, man. And I've been singing his praises since the summer. He's the second quarterback in school history to throw for 2,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, only to Air Harvey. So next week, we got Virginia Lynchburg coming into town. I do expect us to get that W against Virginia Lynchburg. But then the week after that, we got Campbell. And that will be another test for us on the road against another non-conference foe to see if our defense can continue to keep making the strides and our offense becomes more efficient.
Man, I like that. We'll get into some of those matchups 25. Go ahead, Mike.
Real quick, because, I like the data. I was wondering why, because they made it sound like it was such a big upset. So I look back 3, 4, 5 years. New Hampshire was in the toilet last year. I looked at their recruiting class. Nothing major that would make that they're going to make a step change. They were last in the league in rushing. They were somewhere down toward the bottom in passing last year. They beat who they beat? Monmouth. Monmouth was last year. So, they're a formidable team, but there was nothing there to make you think that they were going to be that much of a favored foe. So I just was digging in some numbers, and I was wondering if anybody else saw that.
I think it's just a lack of respect for HBCU programs.
To the fact when you get the overall over the years, the MEAC, SWAC record against historically white colleges. The Colonial is looked at as one of the top 3 conferences. They came in pretty solid. So sometimes you get what I call it lazy journalism.
Yeah.
Where folks just talk about what they have seen has been the natural over the years, those data points. But that's why we do what we do here. Let me go to you, Drew. Let's move on and get into this Hampton, Virginia, William Dick Price Stadium. Hampton gets it done over Norfolk State. They improved to 3-0. Spartans fall to 1-2. On the year. This game was on ESPN, 1 o'clock early. Close most of the game, but Hampton pulls away late and gets it done on the road. Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
For a team that everyone thought may go 0 on the season, or that Tuskegee may be their only victory on the season, they are going to be top 5 in every HBCU poll, maybe as high as 3 in some polls behind Jackson State and North Carolina North Carolina Central. Hampton, not a great running game against Norfolk, 238 passing, not a really stand out game offensively. They only had 330 yards total offense, gave up 271. Both teams turned the ball over multiple times. So both teams threw 2 interceptions. So it just came down, and even Norfolk won the time of possession. So, like Mike says with his data points, you really don't see how statistically how Hampton won this game, but some reason, somewhere, Hampton is 3-0, and maybe sending a message to the new conference that y'all picked us last, and we still may finish last, but it's not going to be a blowout last like everybody is thinking of. It's going to be.
I like that point. Great point. And we'll see what that looks like. The key part in that game to me was a 3rd and 2 inside the 30 for Norfolk State when they were looking to maybe possibly tie the game up. They get an offensive lineman. It gets the penalty that forces it to 3rd and 7 in terms of that, 4th and 7 or whatever. And they couldn't get any momentum, couldn't get it done after that, and essentially turned the ball over to Hampton. Hampton marches down the field and gets the field goal to put it essentially out of reach in terms of that matchup. And that was a key play, and just let you know how the small things go a long way when you're trying to move in that matchup. Final thing we'll talk about in this quarter, let me go to you, BJ Jones, and talk about Grambling and Jackson State. Jackson, Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium. This was a SWAC contest, East against the West. Old foes over the years. Grambling has had Jackson's number, not to be on this matchup. It was a top 10 matchup in terms of Grambling State coming in at number 7, Jackson State coming in at number 1. Tale of 2 halves where Grambling kind of kept it respectful and close, but then Jackson State does what it does and pulled away and makes a major statement. BJ Jones, what were your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
I mean, for a half, man, Grambling gave Jackson State everything that they wanted. You saw what they were doing and what they were dialing up defensively, getting to Shedeur Sanders, forcing the turnover. They were able to run the ball, man. That Washington kid from Grambling is special, by the way. And then in the second half, Grambling went away from what was making them successful. It seems like when Jackson State came out in the second half and immediately went down to score, like Grambling, like it took all of the sail out of the winds. And once you got somebody who's defeated, they are defeated. They've given up. Man, it's just time to put on the pounding, and that's what Jackson State did.
Good point. Good point. Representing the MEAC this morning, Josh, you want to add a little something in there?
Yeah, I got a late kind of report last night that, after Maurice Washington, who is a dynamic kid, after that big run he had last night, he was a little gassed, a little dehydrated. So they were giving him, IVs to try to get him back, but he just couldn't get back to full fruition. But I just want to kind of imagine how the rest of that game goes if that kid is at 100%, because they found something kind of running through the big gap, being able to really kind of get inside, running a lot of, off trap power. I wanted to see a little bit more zone from them, a little bit more zone up front from them yesterday. But credit to Jackson State, man. I don't know what Coach Prime said to them at halftime, because I know he don't use profanity. So I don't know what he said at halftime. But God, BMO love me, man. They came out in that second half and really, really dominated. Shedeur Sanders, another week without an interception. That's something very, very interesting to watch, man. Though he did have a fumble yesterday, another week without an interception. So great second half. I would say that. Great second half. First half, not so good.
It should do the FCS Player of the Year, everybody, so far.
So what now?
It should do the FCS Player of the Year so far.
I don't know.
It's gonna be hard. Yeah, it's gonna be hard for me to. I don't really know anybody other than maybe the running back from North Dakota State that could maybe give him a run right now for FCS Player of the Year. You got some great quarterback play coming out of not Abilene Christian. BJ, what's my guy?
Incarnate Word.
Incarnate Word. Yeah.
Great quarterback play out of Incarnate Word. So that kid is another person that I would look at that could probably challenge Shedeur for FCS Player of the Year. But You know, I gotta see Shador throw the ball down the field a little bit more, man. 87% of his passes are from 10 yards and under.
I need some more data points as well, too. Same reason.
Good stuff. Good stuff. One thing I'll shout out, you see I got the MEAC shirt on. Conference-wise, they went 4 of 5 in terms of wins. Obviously, different matchups, including a top 25 win. I give them much credit in terms of what it looked like. The lone loss was the one we talked about to Hampton. Imagine if they had got that done. Anyway, let's get in, take our last break. We'll come back and we'll talk about some matchups that you want to consider for next week to keep your eyes on as things keep rolling. That was week 3. We'll get into week 4. Stick with us after this last break.
At CDW, we get speed as the new currency of success.
Our team spends way too much time tending to outdated applications and software when they should be focused on driving application agility and innovation.
CDW Amplify Development Services modernizes software and application development to help accelerate innovation and digital transformation.
So you mean building new applications, UI, and mobile interfaces?
Well, you said you needed to innovate more quickly.
Oh, so he's a listener.
To do more at scale, trust CDW Amplify Development Services.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We had 2 of the guys had to jump off and get out of here in terms of making sure they catch their flights as we moving around to make sure you can get your information. We're going to get BJ Jones and AD Drew out of here as well as they're making moves too. But we wanted to make sure we got this last segment in and talk about some of the big matchups that you can consider for next week in week number 4. Let me go to BJ Jones first. Tell me what's on your mind. What should we be looking at this weekend to continue to tell the narrative of HBCU sports pedagogy?
Man, 2 games. I'm going Alabama heavy on this one. Alabama A&M visits Florida A&M in the Eastern Division battle. Let me tell you something. This is the thing about Alabama A&M. I watched them against Austin Peay yesterday. The year that Alabama A&M gets their defense to show up, and their defense has been playing well, the offense has now gone out to lunch. Like, what are the odds? Like, we've been talking about Alabama A&M culturally and defensively, how they've been bad. Their defense played great football yesterday. Offense, out to lunch. And it's going to be interesting to see how they look next week going into Tallahassee, a game that got away from them a year ago up in Hawksville against Florida A&M. And then Prairie View. Prairie View is going to travel east. They're going to visit Alabama State next week. Alabama State quietly is 2-1. Haven't been really making a lot of noise. They've been under the radar. But Alabama State can make a statement game, a statement next week if they can get a win over Prairie View.
Oh, I like those 2 games. And the thing is, last year we saw where the Eastern Division dominated the Western Division. Will we see that continue, or will the West get a chance to make a statement against the Eastern Division in terms of this matchup, especially from a team that is picked to at least be at the top of the Western Division, and what they've done thus far shouldn't change anybody's mind. So I like where you're going with those 2 matchups, certainly in terms of the SWAC, as the SWAC gets into some real conference matchups. Let me go to you, AD Drew. Give me a couple of games that you have on your mind that you tell everybody should be watching this week.
First matchup is a surprise at Bluefield State hosting Fort Valley, as Fort Valley takes their longest road trip of the year to Mitchell Stadium in Bluefield, West Virginia. Look, Fort Valley has had the luxury of being close to home. All their games have been – Fort Valley has gone more than 2.5 hours for a game this year. Won't go more than 2.5 hours for another game for the remainder of the year. So this is their longest road trip. How many Wildcat fans will go and support their team that's 3-0 going into hostile territory against a surprisingly good Bluefield State team with Coach Tony Coaxum. So that's my SIAC matchup that I want to look at. And in the CIAA, Virginia Union travels down south to what could be a preview of the CIAA championship game as they take on Fayetteville State. Virginia Union looking dominant as usual. Fayetteville State doesn't look like they're quite hitting their stride yet. So this will be an interesting matchup between what could be essentially a home game for Virginia Union the second weekend of November.
Let me give you a couple of ones to match up. I'm going to go from a non-conference or independent perspective because it's actually a conference game now in the Colonial. Weird matchup, but these both teams are 3-0. Maybe done it differently, so it'll be interesting just to see what this looks like. You got the Hampton Pirates 3-0 on the road to Delaware 3-0. This is the Delaware team that beat Delaware State a couple of weeks ago, so I'm interested to see what that looks like. That's a 5 p.m. Matchup, so that one's one that kind of has me keeping my eyes on it. And then I'm gonna go into the Big South. You have South Carolina State, number 2, number 3 team in most people's top 10 poll rankings for HBCUs. They're at A&T. So this is interesting. You know, this is a fight between these two border wars, if you would, and always going on. Obviously, A&T has had South Carolina State's number of late. Can they continue just to find a way to get it done? South Carolina State last year, in my opinion, dominated much of that game. Quarterback gets hurt. A&T does what a team does in terms of when you have your foe on the ropes, they find a way to get it done. Will the tides change, or will A&T get off the mat at 0-3 and find a way to get it done and get somebody they generally feel confident about? So that's one that has me thinking much about when you get in this Big South MEAC. Big South, in terms of overall conference, is struggling. So it's interesting to see what that looks like. Obviously, you have Tennessee State that has 0-3. They're off next weekend coming out of Ohio Valley. Think about this. The best team so far overall record-wise is Lindenwood out of the Ohio Valley, 2-0. This is a team that's transitioning. So that's one to keep your eyes on to see what Tennessee State can do. Obviously 0-3, but they played 2 top 10 FCS, or at least top 15 FCS programs in Eastern Washington and Jackson State, and then they go up to an FBS program. So keep your eyes on Tennessee State as they get in the conference play over the next couple of weeks. They'll have Lane, and then they'll get into Bethune-Cookman. We're really getting that matchup, but that's a couple of weeks away. I did want to kind of talk about that. In terms of the MEAC, in terms of week 4, this is a conference, as I said, was 4 or 5 last week. They have 4 to 5 teams playing this week. They have Norfolk at home against St. Francis. Non-conference game. This is one where Norfolk State can make a statement. So I'm interested in to see what that matchup looks like. And Delaware State, sneaky at 2-1. They have Merrimack. That's 1-2. They have to get that game at home to continue to show that they're making strides in their program. So that will get you there. Obviously, BJ gave you some SWAC matchups in terms of what looks in there. And so I think that's pretty good in terms of what that looks like. I'll leave it there in terms of most of those matchups. Obviously, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Alcorn, a Western Division matchup, which is going to be important early. We saw that last year where Pine Bluff really seemed to be getting that game, and then late, Alcorn State, the Braves, change everything in the second half and get it done, and the two teams go in different directions. Pine Bluff is 2-1 on the season, Alcorn 1-2. Who's going to get the better of this deal? This is a 6 o'clock matchup. So that's one that I have in the corner of my eyes to see what that looks like as things go forward. Obviously, Mississippi Valley and Jackson State. We'll cut it there. Some great matchups. Great job by you all. Appreciate you all for joining us in terms of the lab listeners. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with BJ Jones, A.D. Drew, Mike Washington, Joshua Sims Sr., joining us today. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Join us Tuesday as we drop the poll rankings and give you some of those key matchups when we get inside the numbers, those data points we talk about on Tuesday and Thursday next week. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. That's DrKenyattaCavil on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Continue to follow BJ Jones on his Top 5 Tuesday and his Twitter live in terms of he goes there. Make sure you check that out in Spaces. Joshua Sims is on Wednesday with his Spaces. Check those out. 80, Drew, and Brian will give you some updates this afternoon. I believe, as we heard, Joshua Sims will be joining that program. Check out these shows regularly. Carlos Brown on Saturdays as he breaks it down, and obviously Wednesday with O&G Strike Zone and the Nights on the Roundtables on some of our Mondays. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. 80.
Of course.
BJ.
Lecture.
Dismiss.
We'll holler.